There exists a grand theatre of human affairs where most perform their roles without ever glimpsing the mechanisms behind the curtain. You rise before dawn, labor through twilight, collapse into restless sleep, and repeat this cycle with religious devotion, believing that virtue lies in exhaustion and merit dwells in endless toil. But have you ever paused to question why those who preach this gospel of perpetual labor are rarely the ones bearing its burden? Niccolo Machiavelli observed centuries ago that the greatest trick of the powerful is not to seize power through force, but to convince the masses that their servitude is actually their salvation. They have taught you that working harder is the answer, when the real question you should be asking is, who benefits most from your tireless devotion? Consider for a moment the uncomfortable truth that lies beneath the surface of every motivational speech about grinding and hustle culture. The architect does not lay bricks. The general does not charge the front lines. The prince does not till the fields. Yet empires rise, battles are won, and harvests are gathered. Machiavelli understood what modern society desperately tries to obscure. There exists a fundamental difference between those who work within the system and those who design the system itself. The former believe that effort equals reward, that dedication guarantees advancement, that playing by the rules ensures victory. The latter recognize that rules are tools. Systems are constructed, and the game itself was never meant to be fair but advantageous to those who comprehend its true nature. Throughout history, every stable hierarchy has relied upon a simple mechanism of control, convincing the governed that their position is natural, earned, or temporary. You are told that if you simply work hard enough, long enough, and loyally enough, you will ascend to positions of influence and abundance. This narrative serves a beautiful purpose for those already occupying the heights of power. It keeps the ambitious focused on individual effort rather than collective questioning. It channels dissatisfaction into self-improvement rather than systemic challenge. It transforms potential revolutionaries into grateful participants who blame only themselves for their position on the board. Machiavelli would recognize this immediately as statecraft of the highest order, because the most secure throne is one that its subjects believe they might someday occupy through merit alone. The modern world has perfected what ancient princes could only approximate. Where medieval lords relied on divine right and visible force to maintain order, contemporary power structures employ something far more elegant: the illusion of meritocracy, wrapped in the language of opportunity. You are surrounded by stories of those who worked their way to the top, carefully curated examples that prove the system works, while the countless millions who labored with equal intensity yet remained in place are dismissed as lacking something essential, some intangible quality that separates winners from losers. This narrative is not accidental. It is strategic. It is deliberate. It is Machiavellian in the truest sense, because it secures compliance not through fear of punishment, but through hope of reward, not through chains, but through dreams. What you are about to discover is not a comfortable truth. It will not affirm the worldview you have been taught since childhood. Machiavelli never wrote to comfort the governed, but to educate the governing. And in his cold analysis of power, we find something valuable for anyone tired of performing in a play whose script they never chose. The question is not whether you have been working hard enough. The question is whether you have been asking the right questions at all. The question is whether you understand that while you have been focused on perfecting your performance within the game, others have been rewriting the rules to ensure you never win. The question is whether you are ready to see the theater for what it is, to understand the machinery, to learn not just how to work, but how the game itself operates. Machiavelli opens The Prince with a declaration that all states, all dominions that have held power over men, are either republics or principalities. But beneath this categorization lies a deeper observation about the nature of social organization itself. In every human structure, there exists a clear division between those who understand how power functions and those who simply experience its effects. The modern workplace operates on this identical principle, though it disguises the division under layers of corporate speak and meritocratic mythology. When you enter an organization, you are presented with a clear pathway. Work hard, demonstrate loyalty, show dedication, and advancement will follow. This is the story told to every new employee, every ambitious graduate, every person hoping to climb from one rung to the next. Yet observe carefully who tells this story and who benefits from its telling. The executives who preach the gospel of hard work typically did not arrive at their positions through exceptional labor alone. If you examine their paths with Machiavellian scrutiny, you will find networks, strategic alliances, calculated risk-taking, and most importantly, an understanding that ascension requires more than effort. It requires positioning, timing, and the ability to recognize where true power resides versus where ceremonial authority sits. Machiavelli notes in his discourses that fortune favors the bold, but boldness without understanding is merely recklessness. The distinction lies in whether one acts from within an understanding of the game's true mechanics, or merely from desperation and hope. Consider the fundamental structure of how value flows through any organization. At the base, you find those who execute, the laborers, the individual contributors, the dedicated workers who arrive early and leave late. Their compensation is fixed or incrementally variable, tied to hours invested and tasks completed. Above them sit managers who multiply the efforts of others, extracting value not through their own direct labor, but through the coordination and direction of those beneath them. Higher still are executives who control resource allocation, strategic direction, and relationship with capital itself. At the apex, site owners and investors who extract value simply through possession, through the legal right to claim the surplus generated by all the labor below. This is not a hierarchy of effort, but a hierarchy of understanding. The worker believes they are compensated for their labor, and in a sense they are. But Machiavelli would immediately recognize the game being played. The worker sells their time and effort for a wage that represents only a fraction of the value they generate, while the remainder flows upward to those who contribute less direct labor, but understand the mechanism of value extraction. This is not a moral judgment, but an observation of structure. The person toiling 12 hours daily generates enormous value, but they have agreed to a transaction where they receive a fixed wage, while the surplus belongs to others. They have been taught to view this arrangement as fair, as natural, as the appropriate reward for their position in the meritocracy. What prevents the laborer from recognizing this structure? The narrative of hard work serves as the primary obfuscation mechanism. When you believe that your current position reflects your current effort level, you naturally conclude that greater effort will yield greater position. This keeps you focused on working harder within your role rather than questioning the role itself. You run faster on the treadmill, not noticing that speed and distance are disconnected variables in this particular machine. Machiavelli observed that the prince must sometimes appear to embody virtues he does not possess, and in the modern context, the system itself must appear meritocratic even when it functions oligarchically. The second mechanism of control is isolation of effort. When each worker focuses on their individual performance, their personal advancement, their specific contribution, they fail to recognize their collective position and collective power. Machiavelli understood that divided opposition poses no threat to established power. The genius of modern work culture is that it has convinced people that solidarity is for the weak, that collective action represents an admission of individual inadequacy, that true merit expresses itself through solo achievement. This ideology serves those at the top magnificently because isolated workers competing against each other will never organize to question the fundamental distribution of the value they collectively create. The third element is temporal misdirection. You are taught to think in terms of career arcs that span decades, to accept current sacrifice for future reward, to invest your present for a promised return that always seems to hover just beyond the next promotion, the next year, the next milestone. Machiavelli would recognize this as masterful because it converts present discontent into future hope, channeling dissatisfaction away from action and toward patience. The powerful make promises about tomorrow to secure compliance today, and by the time tomorrow arrives with its inevitable disappointments, you have invested too much to abandon the path. The sunk cost of decades spent playing by the rules becomes a prison more effective than any external constraint. To understand why they teach you to work hard rather than to understand the game, one must grasp a fundamental Machiavellian principle. Power perpetuates itself not primarily through force, but through the manufacture of consent. When a prince conquers a new territory, Machiavelli advises, he faces a choice. He can rule through constant military presence and fear, which is expensive and unstable, or he can integrate the conquered people into systems where they believe their interests align with maintaining the existing order. The latter approach is far more sustainable, far more elegant, and far more difficult to resist because the oppressed become active participants in their own subjugation. The modern economic system has perfected this integration. You are not forced to work at metaphorical gunpoint, at least not obviously. Instead, you are presented with a framework where individual survival requires participation, where basic necessities are gated behind employment, where the alternative to playing the game appears to be destitution and social death. This creates a situation where workers genuinely believe they have chosen their positions, that they are free agents making rational decisions in a marketplace of opportunities. Machiavelli understood that the appearance of choice is often more valuable than choice itself, because it transforms subjects into collaborators who will defend the system against critique. Education serves as the primary mechanism for embedding this worldview before critical faculties fully develop. From childhood, you are taught that hard work is the cardinal virtue, that following instructions leads to success, that questioning authority is problematic while compliance is rewarded. The grading system itself trains you to perform for external validation, to measure your worth by metrics someone else has established, to compete with peers for scarce rewards distributed by those in power. By the time you enter the workforce, you have spent 15 to 20 years internalizing the idea that your value is determined by your productivity, as measured by authorities whose right to measure you remains unquestioned. Notice what is systematically absent from standard education. You are not taught how wealth actually accumulates across generations. You are not taught the mechanics of capital versus labor, the function of asset appreciation versus wage income, the legal structures that allow wealth to compound while protecting it from taxation. You are not taught how political influence is purchased, how regulatory capture functions, how the game is rigged at levels so far above your daily experience that you cannot even see the mechanisms. Instead, you learn to solve equations and write essays and follow instructions, all valuable skills for a productive worker, but none of them teaching you how power actually functions in the world you're about to enter. Machiavelli writes in The Prince that it is better to be feared than loved if one cannot be both, but in truth, the most secure power is that which convinces its subjects that no domination is occurring at all. When workers genuinely believe that their position reflects their merit, that the wealthy earned their wealth, that the system rewards the deserving, they will defend that system more vigorously than any paid army could. They will police each other, enforcing compliance with work norms and punishing those who question the fundamental fairness of the arrangement. They become unpaid enforcers of the very system that exploits them. And this is the ultimate achievement of the hard work narrative. The mythology of the self-made billionaire serves this function perfectly. You are presented with carefully crafted stories of individuals who started with nothing and built empires through sheer determination and labor. What these narratives systematically exclude is the role of initial capital, family connections, access to education and networks, fortunate timing, legal structures that protect accumulation, and most importantly, the thousands of employees whose labor generated the actual value while the founder extracted it. The myth focuses on the exceptional individual while rendering invisible the structural advantages and collective labor that actually enabled the success. This is not to say that effort is irrelevant or that individual agency does not exist. Machiavelli was not a determinist. He believed that fortune controls half of our actions, but leaves the other half to our own governance. The crucial point is that effort without understanding is like rowing vigorously while someone else controls the rudder. You may work yourself to exhaustion, but if you do not understand where you are actually going and who benefits from your journey, your labor simply serves someone else's destination. The game is not whether you work hard, but whether you understand why you are working, for whom, and whether the promised rewards are structurally possible or simply narrative carrots dangled to maintain your compliance. The concept of value itself is manipulated to serve power, and Machiavelli would immediately recognize this as statecraft. In a functioning society, those who control the narrative about what constitutes valuable work control the distribution of resources without ever appearing to do so. You have been taught that value is determined by the market, that wages reflect contribution, that compensation naturally flows to those who provide the most benefit. This is presented as natural law, as inevitable as gravity, when in truth it is a constructed system designed to benefit those who own rather than those who labor. Consider the contradiction between compensation and social necessity. A hedge fund manager manipulating financial instruments can earn millions annually while contributing nothing tangible to human welfare. A teacher shaping the minds of the next generation struggles to afford housing in the city where they work. A nurse maintaining life itself during night shifts earns a fraction of what a marketing executive receives for convincing people to desire products they do not need. If value truly reflected contribution to human flourishing, this distribution would be inverted. The fact that it is not reveals that something other than social value determines compensation. What determines compensation in reality is power. Specifically, the power to extract value from others' labor, the power to claim ownership of productive assets, the power to set terms rather than accept them. Machiavelli observed that men judge more by their eyes than by their hands, meaning they are more influenced by appearances than by substance. The appearance of meritocracy must be maintained, so elaborate justification systems are constructed. The hedge fund manager creates value through allocation efficiency. The teacher would earn more if they were truly excellent. The nurse chose a caring profession, implying compensation was never the point. Each justification obscures the fundamental reality. Those who work hardest are often compensated least because they have the least power to demand otherwise. The mechanism of this extraction operates through ownership structures that Machiavelli would recognize as foundational to power. In his time, land ownership determined who controlled agricultural surplus and thus political power. Today, Ownership of productive capital, intellectual property, distribution networks, and financial instruments serves the same function. The worker arrives at a factory or office or hospital and applies their labor to tools, systems, and resources they do not own. They generate value far exceeding their wage, but that excess belongs legally to the owner of the capital, not the provider of the labor. This arrangement is so normalized that questioning it seems radical, yet it represents a specific choice about how to structure economic relations. The genius of capitalism, from a Machiavellian perspective, is that it disguises this extraction as voluntary exchange. No one forces you to accept employment at a wage that captures only a fraction of the value you create. You chose to apply, chose to accept the offer, chose to show up each day. The fact that the alternative might be homelessness and starvation does not negate your choice, at least not in the official narrative. Machiavelli would appreciate this because it secures compliance through the appearance of consent while maintaining the substance of coercion. You are free to refuse the terms, just as a medieval peasant was free to leave the Lord's land. But where exactly would you go in a world where all territory is claimed? This is why they teach you to work hard rather than to understand ownership structures, capital accumulation, and the legal mechanisms that enforce them. If workers understood that their labor generates profit precisely because they are compensated less than the value they create, if they recognize that business success depends on this extraction rather than transcending it, if they grasped that the owner class perpetuates itself through inheritance and asset appreciation rather than exceptional effort, the entire justification for the current distribution would collapse. The narrative of hard work maintains the system by locating success and failure at the individual level, rather than examining structural distribution. The student graduates with debt, accepting a position that barely covers living expenses while generating enormous value for shareholders they will never meet. They are told this is the entry level, that patience and dedication will lead to advancement, that they are building equity in their career. Meanwhile, the child of wealth inherits assets that appreciate while they sleep, generating passive income that exceeds what the indebted graduate will earn through decades of active labor. One works hard, the other understands the game. Machiavelli would not moralize about this disparity. He would simply observe that power flows to those who comprehend and utilize its mechanisms, while those who believe in meritocracy work diligently within a game designed to ensure their continued service to others' interests. Machiavelli advises the prince that it is not necessary to possess all virtues, but essential to appear to possess them. The modern application of this principle manifests in corporate culture, where the appearance of meritocracy must be maintained even as structural advantages determine outcomes. You see diversity initiatives that celebrate individual advancement while leaving untouched the fundamental distribution of resources and power. You encounter leadership speaking about values and purpose while optimizing every decision for shareholder returns. You observe companies praising work-life balance in public while rewarding those who sacrifice everything for the organization in practice. This gap between stated values and actual incentive structures is not hypocrisy in the conventional sense. It is strategic maintenance of legitimacy while pursuing power. The company cannot openly declare that it values you only insofar as you generate profit exceeding your cost, that loyalty is a one-way expectation, that your development matters only to the extent it serves organizational objectives. Such honesty would undermine the emotional investment required to extract maximum effort. Instead, language about family, team, and shared purpose creates psychological bonds that transcend the transactional nature of employment, convincing workers to give more than rational calculation would justify. The vocabulary of modern work conceals its actual nature. You are not a laborer selling your time and effort for compensation. You are a team member, a valued contributor, part of a family. The company does not extract surplus value from your work. It provides opportunity, invests in your growth, offers you a platform to make an impact. Your manager does not supervise your exploitation. They coach, mentor, and guide your development. This linguistic transformation is Machiavellian brilliance because it reframes a fundamentally extractive relationship as a collaborative partnership, making resistance feel like betrayal and collective action seem like disloyalty to the very people you sit beside each day. Machiavelli understood that necessity makes men good, meaning that constraints shape behavior more powerfully than exhortation. Modern work culture has perfected the art of creating necessities that bind workers to the system. Healthcare tied to employment transforms leaving a job into risking your family's medical access. Stock options that vest over years create golden handcuffs, making departure expensive even when the work has become unbearable. Retirement accounts that depend on market performance align your interests with capital appreciation, turning you into a defender of the very system that undercompensates your labor. Each mechanism individually seems reasonable, even beneficial, but collectively they construct a cage disguised as a career path. The meritocracy narrative requires visible examples of ascension to maintain credibility. So organizations carefully cultivate stories of those who rose from humble positions to leadership. What these narratives obscure is the exceptional nature of such journeys, the specific circumstances that enabled them, and the thousands who applied equal effort without achieving similar outcomes. Survivorship bias is weaponized to maintain hope, because the existence of any success stories, however rare, proves that the system works for those who work hard enough. The fact that identical effort produces vastly different outcomes, depending on factors beyond individual control, is rendered invisible by focusing attention on the exceptional cases rather than statistical realities. Consider how performance evaluation functions in most organizations. You are assessed on metrics that those above you have defined, judged by standards that serve organizational objectives, and compensated based on budgets and structures you had no role in creating. The evaluation claims to measure your individual contribution, but in reality it measures your conformity to expectations and your value to those assessing you. Machiavelli notes that men are more ready to repay an injury than a benefit, and this applies to organizational politics perfectly. Challenging authority, questioning directives, or prioritizing principle over compliance will be remembered and punished far more readily than quiet competence is rewarded. The system trains you to perform loyalty more than excellence, because loyalty serves power while excellence might threaten it. The game, then, operates on multiple levels simultaneously. At the surface level, you compete with peers for advancement, believing that superior performance will be recognized and rewarded. At a deeper level, you are being sorted into those who accept the system's premises and those who question them, with the former group selected for advancement regardless of capability. At the deepest level, your collective labor generates wealth that flows upward through ownership structures, and your belief in meritocracy ensures you blame yourself rather than the structure when you receive only a tiny fraction of what you create. To work hard is to play the surface game. To understand the game is to recognize all three levels simultaneously. The transition from understanding to action requires examining what Machiavelli called virtù, which is not virtue in the moral sense, but rather the capacity to shape circumstances rather than be shaped by them. Most workers possess industry, loyalty, and dedication, but these qualities serve others' interests when deployed without understanding. True virtù in the modern context means recognizing where actual leverage resides and having the courage to utilize it, even when doing so contradicts the narratives you have internalized about proper conduct. Your leverage does not come from working harder than your peers. It comes from recognizing that your labor has value independent of any single employer's willingness to recognize it. That scarcity of your skills creates negotiating power, and that collective action multiplies individual leverage exponentially. The system teaches you to think of yourself as replaceable, to be grateful for employment, to never risk losing what you have by demanding more. This psychological conditioning serves those who benefit from your undercompensation, but it has no basis in reality. The organization needs your labor to function. Without workers, capital is inert. This fundamental dependency is obscured by hierarchies that position workers as supplicants rather than essential participants. Machiavelli observed that he who has relied least on fortune has established himself the strongest. Translating this to modern employment means reducing your dependency on any single income source, any single employer's goodwill, any single career path's continuation. The person living paycheck to paycheck has no leverage because they cannot afford to walk away, cannot risk unemployment, cannot demand better terms. The system's response is not to pay workers enough to build security, but to ensure that security remains perpetually out of reach for most, maintaining a workforce that must accept whatever terms are offered. Breaking this cycle requires understanding that true security comes not from loyal service, but from developing capabilities and resources that provide options. The concept of passive income represents the clearest illustration of the game's actual rules. Passive income means compensation that arrives independent of your active labor, typically through ownership of assets that appreciate or generate returns. The person who owns rental properties receives income whether they work or not. The investor who holds dividend-paying stocks receives quarterly payments for simply possessing the shares. The author whose book continues selling receives royalties while sleeping. These are not rewards for hard work in any direct sense. They are rewards for ownership, for having capital to deploy, for having achieved a position where your money works instead of you working. The worker, by contrast, must continually exchange time for money, active labor for compensation. When they stop working, income stops immediately. This is not because they are lazy or because their work lacks value. It is because they are on the wrong side of the capital-labor divide, selling their effort rather than owning the mechanisms that extract value from others' effort. Machiavelli would observe that the worker has confused the appearance of the game with its substance. The appearance is meritocracy, hard work leading to deserved rewards. The substance is a structure where ownership trumps effort every single time. How does one cross this divide? The traditional answer offered by the system is to save diligently, invest wisely, and over decades build sufficient capital to transition from labor to ownership. This path is theoretically possible and practically implausible for most workers, whose wages barely cover expenses and whose decades of saving generate returns dwarfed by what those born into capital accumulate effortlessly. The narrative serves its purpose by offering hope while ensuring the vast majority remain workers throughout their lives. It is a lottery where the odds are hidden, and buying tickets is called financial responsibility. The alternative approach requires recognizing that the game can be played at different levels, simultaneously. You can work for compensation while building assets that appreciate. You can develop skills that command premium rates, reducing the hours you must sell. You can create intellectual property, products or services that generate income beyond your active labor. You can form collectives with others to pool resources and share ownership. Each strategy moves you incrementally from pure labor toward capital, from being wholly dependent on selling time toward having your resources work for you. Machiavelli would approve of this approach because it operates within the system's rules while bending them toward your interests rather than accepting the position assigned to you. The crucial psychological shift is abandoning the belief that working harder within your current role will transform your structural position. Exceptional performance as an employee generates raises measured in percentage points while generating profits measured in multiples of your salary. The mathematics simply do not support the narrative of working your way to wealth through employment alone. The CEO earning millions did not get there by being 100 times better at their job than someone earning 50,000. They got there through a combination of positioning, networking, risk-taking, and most importantly, negotiating compensation tied to organizational performance rather than hourly labor. They learned the game. Machiavelli's most controversial advice to the prince is that cruelty well used can be legitimate if it secures the state. Translating this to personal strategy means recognizing that others will consider you ruthless when you prioritize your interests over their expectations, but their judgment does not determine the correctness of your actions. The worker who refuses to work unpaid overtime will be labeled uncommitted. The employee who switches jobs for higher compensation will be called disloyal. The professional who negotiates aggressively will be considered difficult. These labels serve to enforce compliance with norms that benefit employers at workers' expense. The psychological manipulation inherent in these labels is profound. Loyalty is demanded downward, but rarely reciprocated upward. Companies eliminate positions without hesitation when profit margins require it. Yet workers who leave for better opportunities face accusations of betrayal. Flexibility is expected from employees who must adjust to changing priorities and increased workloads. Yet requesting flexibility in hours or location is framed as lack of dedication. The double standard is not accidental. It reflects power relations disguised as moral expectations. Machiavelli would recognize this immediately as the powerful defining virtue in terms that serve their interests, while condemning the same behaviors when employed by the weak. To understand the game is to recognize that much of what you have been taught about proper conduct in professional settings actually functions to limit your leverage and maintain your subordination. Being a team player means prioritizing collective needs over your compensation. Being professional means accepting disrespect without response. Being committed means sacrificing personal life for organizational demands. Each expectation channels your energy towards serving others' interests while framing resistance as moral failure. The game is not played by these rules at higher levels, but these rules are enforced at lower levels to prevent upward mobility. Consider the entrepreneur who builds a company by paying employees far less than the value they generate, accumulates wealth through their labor, then sells the company for millions, while the workers who built it receive nothing beyond their wages. This person will be celebrated as a visionary, a job creator, a success story. Now consider the employee who works exactly the hours they are paid for, switches companies every few years for higher compensation, and negotiates aggressively for their worth. This person will be viewed with suspicion, labeled as mercenary, questioned about their loyalty and team commitment. Both are playing rationally within the system's rules, but the narrative treats them oppositely because one behavior serves power while the other challenges it. The concept of professional reputation functions as a control mechanism masked as career advice. You are told that maintaining good relationships, never burning bridges, and preserving your reputation are essential for long-term success. This is partially true, but it is weaponized to prevent you from acting in your interests when doing so might inconvenience those with power over you. Leaving a toxic job becomes fraught with anxiety about references. Reporting misconduct risks being labeled a troublemaker. Demanding fair compensation invites being marked as difficult. The threat to your reputation is real, but it exists because the system is designed to punish those who refuse to accept subordination quietly. Machiavelli writes that princes who have achieved great things have thought little of keeping their word. In the modern context, this translates to recognizing that organizational commitments to you are conditional, while your commitment to the organization is expected to be absolute. The company will restructure, downsize, or eliminate your position whenever financial logic dictates, yet you are expected to provide loyalty, regardless of how you are treated. This asymmetry is fundamental to the game. Those at the top treat employment as a transaction to be optimized continuously. Those at the bottom are taught to treat it as a relationship requiring emotional investment and sacrifice. Guess who benefits from this arrangement? Breaking free requires adopting what might seem like cynicism, but is actually realism. Your relationship with any employer is transactional. They pay you to perform specific functions that generate value exceeding your cost. When this equation no longer serves them, they will end the relationship regardless of your dedication or sacrifice. Understanding this does not mean working poorly or acting dishonestly. It means recognizing the true nature of the exchange and responding accordingly. You provide professional service for agreed compensation. When better opportunities arise, you pursue them. When your interests conflict with organizational demands, you prioritize your interests. This is not betrayal. This is understanding the game. The fear that prevents most workers from acting in their interests is not irrational. There are real risks to challenging the system, to prioritizing yourself, to refusing to accept what is offered. Machiavelli acknowledged that fortune is the arbiter of half our actions. You cannot control all outcomes. But recognizing the game means understanding that the safety you sacrifice so much to preserve is largely illusory. The loyal employee gets laid off when budgets tighten. The dedicated worker is passed over for someone's nephew. The reliable performer receives minimal raises, while market rates increase substantially. The security you forfeited your interests to maintain never existed in the form you imagined. You have already been playing a risky game. The question is whether you will continue playing it unconsciously or start playing consciously. The ultimate lesson of Machiavelli's work is that effective action requires clear vision unclouded by wishful thinking. The Prince was written not to describe how men ought to behave, but how they actually do behave, and from that realistic assessment to derive strategies for navigating reality as it exists rather than as we wish it to be. The same principle applies to understanding work, value, and compensation in contemporary society. The system does not function as you were taught it functions. Hard work is not rewarded proportionally. Merit is not the primary determinant of advancement. The game is not designed to be fair, but to be stable, and stability requires keeping most players focused on effort, while a small minority understands and exploits the actual rules. This recognition need not lead to despair or cynicism, though it certainly challenges comfortable narratives. Machiavelli himself was not a cynic, but a republican who believed in civic virtue and collective governance. His advice to princes was descriptive, explaining how power operates, but his political philosophy favored systems where power was distributed and checked rather than concentrated. The modern equivalent is understanding that while the current system operates extractively, channeling wealth upward through ownership structures and narrative manipulation, this arrangement is neither natural nor inevitable. It is a specific set of choices, legal structures, and cultural practices that can be understood, navigated, and potentially transformed. The transformation begins with individuals refusing to internalize the narratives that serve others' interests. When you stop believing that your compensation reflects your worth, you can demand what your labor is actually worth in the market. When you stop treating employment as a relationship requiring loyalty, you can optimize your career strategically rather than emotionally. When you stop accepting that hard work alone will lead to security, you can pursue actual security through ownership, assets, and diversification. Each individual awakening weakens the system's hold because the system depends on your voluntary compliance, your internalized limitations, your willingness to work for less than you are worth while believing the disparity reflects your inadequacy rather than structural extraction. Collective action multiplies individual leverage exponentially, which is precisely why it is so intensely discouraged by those benefiting from the current arrangement. Labor unions are demonized despite historical evidence that organized workers achieved the 40-hour workweek, weekends, safety regulations, and other protections that individual negotiation never could have secured. Collective bargaining is framed as antiquated or unnecessary in modern economies, even as wealth concentration reaches levels unseen since the Gilded Age. The narrative that you should focus on individual excellence rather than collective power serves those who benefit from workers competing against each other rather than recognizing their common interests against capital. Machiavelli observed that the reformer has enemies in all those who profit from the old order, and only lukewarm defenders in those who would profit from the new. Changing how you relate to work means facing resistance not only from employers and systems, but from peers who have invested their identities in the old narratives. When you refuse to work unpaid overtime, you make colleagues who comply look worse by comparison. When you switch jobs for better pay, you challenge others who stayed out of loyalty. When you speak openly about compensation, you violate taboos that prevent workers from recognizing pay disparities. Each act of clarity and self-interest threatens the social mechanisms that keep workers compliant, which is why such acts are punished through social pressure and professional consequences. Yet the path forward requires exactly this courage. Machiavelli distinguished between those who can recognize truths when shown them and those who can recognize truths independently. The latter group is smaller but essential for change. You must become someone who sees clearly even when vision is uncomfortable, who acts strategically even when action invites judgment, who prioritizes your actual interests even when doing so contradicts internalized programming. This is not selfishness, but self-respect. This is not betrayal, but appropriate boundaries. This is not cynicism, but realism about a system that has been cynical toward you from the beginning. The game continues whether you understand it or not. Capital will continue extracting value from labor. Ownership will continue appreciating while wages stagnate. Those positioned to benefit from the system will continue telling you that working harder is the answer while they work smarter, leveraging capital and understanding rather than hours and effort. The question is whether you will continue playing unconsciously, accepting the narratives and performing your assigned role, or whether you will open your eyes to the machinery, understand how it functions, and start playing with full awareness of what you are doing and why. Machiavelli wrote that men are either to be kindly treated or utterly destroyed, because they will revenge themselves for small injuries, but cannot do so for great ones. The modern translation is that you are either part of the system, unconsciously serving its interests, or you understand it well enough to navigate it strategically. There is no comfortable middle ground where hard work alone protects you. The knowledge before you is uncomfortable precisely because it is true. The powerful have always preferred that the governed remain ignorant of power's mechanisms, finding comfort in narratives about merit and fairness rather than seeing the structured advantages and systematic extraction that actually determine outcomes. You cannot unknow what you now understand. You cannot return to simple faith in hard work after recognizing how the game actually functions. The only question remaining is what you will do with this understanding. Will you use it to navigate more strategically, to build actual security rather than its illusion, to stop sacrificing yourself for empty promises? Or will you file this knowledge away as interesting but ultimately irrelevant to your daily choices, returning to the comfortable narratives that demand less but deliver nothing? Machiavelli would tell you that fortune favors the bold, but only when boldness is joined with understanding. Now you understand. What remains is choosing whether to be bold. The great deception of your age is not that hard work is unnecessary, but that hard work is sufficient, as if effort alone could overcome structural position, as if individual merit could triumph over inherited advantage, as if the rules were designed to reward virtue rather than to perpetuate power. You have spent years, perhaps decades, internalizing a worldview where your position reflects your value and your value reflects your effort, never questioning who benefits most from your belief in this equation. Machiavelli understood that the most secure dominion is one where subjects police themselves, internalizing the values of those who rule them and enforcing those values on each other. You have been both prisoner and guard in a system that extracts your labor, while convincing you that any failure to thrive represents personal inadequacy rather than structural design. But understanding, once achieved, cannot be unachieved. You now see the machinery behind the curtain, recognize the game beneath the narrative. Comprehend that those who preach hard work have typically succeeded through ownership and positioning rather than exceptional effort. This knowledge carries weight because it demands response. You cannot simultaneously understand how the system functions and continue participating in it unconsciously. Every hour you exchange for inadequate compensation, every sacrifice you make for an organization that views you as a cost to be minimized, every opportunity you forfeit because you were taught that loyalty and patience are virtues, each becomes a conscious choice rather than an unconscious habit. The question is not whether you will work, because work remains necessary for most of us. The question is whether you will work with clear eyes and strategic intention, or continue performing roles written by others for their benefit. The path forward is neither simple nor guaranteed. Machiavelli never promised that understanding power would make you powerful, only that ignorance of power would certainly make you weak. You face real constraints, real risks, real consequences for acting in your interests, rather than accepting the terms offered. But you also possess real leverage if you choose to recognize and utilize it. Your labor has value independent of any single employer's willingness to acknowledge it. Your skills are scarce in ways that create negotiating power if you overcome the conditioning that taught you to be grateful rather than confident. Your collective power, if joined with others who see clearly, exceeds the power of those who benefit from your division and competition. The game is structured against you, but structure is not destiny. It is simply the current arrangement of power, and power can be rearranged by those who understand it sufficiently. What you do with this understanding matters not only for your individual life, but for the collective possibility of those who come after you. Every person who refuses to internalize narratives that serve others' interests weakens those narratives. Every worker who demands fair compensation makes it easier for the next to do the same. Every individual who builds actual security through assets and ownership rather than chasing the illusion of security through loyal service demonstrates an alternative path. Machiavelli believed that while fortune controls much, virtue, understood as effective action rather than moral goodness, controls the rest. Your effective action, joined with others pursuing similar awakening, can shift what is possible. Not easily, not quickly, not without cost, but genuinely. The game was designed by those who benefit from it, but games can be redesigned by those who refuse to play unconsciously. So you stand at a choice point that Machiavelli would recognize immediately. You can return to the comfortable narratives, work hard, hope that this time loyalty will be rewarded and merit will be recognized, accept what is offered, and blame yourself when it proves insufficient. This path is familiar, sanctioned by authority, supported by the culture surrounding you. It demands little courage because it requires no deviation from the script you have been handed. Or you can step into uncomfortable clarity, seeing the game as it is, rather than as you were taught it should be. Acting strategically rather than hopefully, building actual security rather than its illusion. And joining with others who see clearly to create collective power that individual effort can never achieve. This path is uncertain, opposed by those who benefit from your compliance, demanding courage because it requires you to trust your understanding over their narratives. The world did not teach you to understand the game because your understanding threatens the stability of systems that depend on your unconscious participation. But you understand now. You see how hard work is taught to those whose labor enriches others, while those others teach their children about ownership, leverage, and strategic positioning. You recognize that merit matters far less than you were told, that effort alone will not save you, that the game was never designed to be fair. This knowledge is your inheritance from Machiavelli, who wrote 5 centuries ago that men must be either caressed or destroyed, but never left in a position where they can harm you. Applied to your situation, you must either fully internalize the system's narratives and accept your position within them, or fully understand the system and navigate it strategically. There is no safe middle ground where hard work alone protects you from exploitation. If this message resonated with you, if you felt something shift in how you see the structures surrounding you, if you recognize that you cannot unknow what you now understand, then consider what it means to be part of something larger than individual awakening. Share this with someone still caught in the old narratives. Leave a comment describing your own moment of recognition. Subscribe to continue this exploration of how power actually functions beneath the stories we are told. The game continues whether you understand it or not, but understanding gives you the only advantage that truly matters: the ability to play consciously rather than being played.